Sam Roy is a researcher and academic in Old Town, Maine, and I have just been reading one of his academic papers, and I read a few academic papers every year. Um, Sam Roy, you seem to have worked with every living, breathing academic in New England. This article is co-authored by at least a dozen other people. Why so many people were involved?
So the type of work we do, we're interested in how people make decisions, and to really understand how people do decision making, you need to have a lot of different perspectives at the table. So you need to understand the many different aspects of decision making, the many different parts of the system that sort of impacted by decision making. So it's really important to have a lot of different research disciplines and expertise at the table to get a more comprehensive understanding of things.
Now, I'm just imagining a table of more than a dozen academics using different jargon and having different perspectives. I'm surprised you got anything published. How long did this take?
This paper took about 2 years. It was actually we got a lot of help because of it was involved with a sort of a larger project known as the Future of Dams. This is a National Science Foundation funded project. It's a bit larger than a typical NSF project, where it requires engagement across multiple universities, and there was an incentive to work collaboratively among the universities, but also among many different research disciplines. So we sort of hit the ground running with a lot of pre-existing collaborations, and that was a big contributor to the ability to publish this work.
Well, I must say, I'll try to keep the academic jokes to a minimum, but good article, good contribution, and it is dam removal, river restoration, the trade-offs, and I am forever quoting ecologist Barry Commoner from the early 70s, who said there's no such thing as a free lunch. So the first startling news that I got out of this, you don't usually get news from an academic paper, but there has been a huge rise in the number of dams removed. I wouldn't have known that, wouldn't have thought it. Why is that?
So it's sort of it's interesting. There's been sort of a wave since a few really groundbreaking dam removals that have occurred in the past. Some of these happened in Maine, my home state. For example, the Edwards Dam on the Kennebec River was removed in 1999. It was the first time at which the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission deemed the removal of a dam was necessary over the benefit of producing hydropower. They considered the ecological impacts of the dam to be, far more important to consider versus the production of hydropower. And that sort of opened the floodgates, again, no pun intended, of other dam removal projects. A lot of it also has to do with there's many dams across the landscape in New England and the Atlantic provinces that have long outlived their original purposes. They're now aging, and decisions need to be made about them. And so typically the least expensive decision to make for these dams, and the one that leads to greater benefits for safety and for the freshwater ecosystems, is to have the dams removed.
Well, it is ironic, fortuitous, and even in a way macabre that you mentioned safety when we are having this conversation while tens of thousands of people in Michigan are suffering the effects of two dam breaches at the same time, one of which didn't pass its whatever inspection procedure you have in the US, and another one was kind of iffy. I had no idea that dams could be so unsafe. Speak to that for a bit.
Sure. Of course, there are each state in the United States has their own dam dam survey organization. So there's always a dam safety agency for each state in the United States. But as I mentioned, there are tens of thousands of dams across the country. many of those are very old, and they have a lot of ground to cover. The folks who are doing these dam safety assessments, so it's difficult to cover all that ground in the first place. They're strapped for funding. They need more funding to be able to do a better job, basically. And sometimes some of these dams they don't get assessed as they should, or in some of them, the process for regulation just takes a very long time. And while these decisions are being made over the span of 5 years or so, things can happen, such as what's happening in Michigan, unfortunately.
Now, even with a safe dam, I also didn't realize that an enormous amount of silt can build up behind a dam to the tune of, dozens of tons and the equivalent of a 5-story building. And that really creates a difference in the habitat and the temperature of the water and all kinds of things. Is that one of the things that you mean when you talk about a dam outliving its lifespan?
That's correct. So in some locations, there's sedimentation rates, the rate at which sediment accumulates within the reservoir behind the dam, that can outpace the time frame that the original the owners or operators of the dam expected. So that can actually even shorten the lifespan of a dam even further and reduce the efficiency of the dam. By efficiency, I mean, what they're using the dam for. Are they using it to control flow? Are they using it to extract water, potable water for a community? Is it for hydropower production? That sediment accumulation can lead to a loss in efficiency and basically economic losses for the operators of the dam.
Now you try to compare two things, and sometimes, forgive me, but some of these academic studies are the equivalent of the old joke, do you walk to work or take your lunch? Because you're trying to compare the benefit of hydroelectric generation, and I commend you for that because that is one element to this, but comparing that to the loss of so-called biomass. Now, by biomass, do you mean living things, flora, fauna, fish, and so on?
Correct.
Okay, so how do you go about doing that? I mean, it is macabre, but the actuarial scientists indicate that a human life is worth $1 million for insurance purposes, and they calculate highway deaths. How do you calculate the value of so-called biomass?
So that is a trick, and it's something that we don't want to embrace completely. We don't intend to put a dollar sign on the various criteria that folks use when they're deciding what to do with their dam. So, for example, in the paper, I described the process by which we can at least compare the ability to produce hydropower and the ability to restore sea-run fish to their freshwater habitat. And by sea-run fish, I mean fish species that spend parts of their life stages in marine and freshwater habitat.
Of course, if I may interrupt, if I had you on the witness stand, I would say, but Mr. Roy, you in fact have de facto put a dollar sign on the biomass because you've quantified the hydroelectric power. That has a dollar value. If we go back to grade 5 algebra, you have said the biomass is worth more. So in effect, you've done that.
I think that I suppose that it could be interpreted as such, but the major focus for us is to offer a series of different decision scenarios in which you could gather a group of stakeholders or folks who are impacted by the decisions for dams and come up with a scenario where you're trading off between hydropower production and biomass, also the fish population improvements, to find one that works for the greatest amount of people who are impacted by the dam decision.
Yeah, and if I may add, I'm not faulting you for having done that. It seems very clear in your paper that especially with the small dams, and I don't think anybody's arguing for the removal of the Hoover Dam or something, but these small dams that generate a small amount of electricity are really not of such an overwhelming benefit that the benefit of the tourism and the environment and the so-called biomass, meaning fish to eat and so on, isn't superior. But then you get into something, and now I'm back to the academic humor. You're essentially using a multi variant regression analysis, which I think means separating all the different elements, and you name 10 in the decision-making process, trying to isolate them and trying to come to a decision about what is the best course of action. Have I got that definition about right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, we're trying to identify the many different factors that could be impacted by dams and dam removal or other decisions regarding dams.
And this is like someone saying, well, where should my kids go to university? If they go in Maine, it is going to be pastoral. They can go to the outlet malls. If they go to Quebec, they can learn how to speak French. And in Calgary, they can be in the Rockies and skiing. And you get so many different variables, you don't seem to be able to make a decision. So tell me how you carved out those 10 different elements in order to guide other people who might be trying to make this decision.
Yep. So it was difficult to make the selection of different of those different decision criteria. It is based purely on the on stakeholder engagement. So we've engaged with folks who are in the various river basins that the analysis was performed in. So that includes rivers such as the Connecticut, the Penobscot, Kennebec, some of the larger river basins.
By the way, I think I hear a stakeholder in the background there.
Yeah, I have two stakeholders here with me.
Well, since we're all working from home, I always say that's the nicest sound in the world. And I can tell you from personal experience, you'll miss it when it's gone. So enjoy it while you can.
Yep, I certainly am. I've definitely had more time these days to enjoy it as well. But so essentially what I'm saying is those criteria were selected because of their perceived importance by different stakeholders within the basin. But you're right, it's a lot to juggle. So essentially what we were doing within that paper was to show that it is indeed possible to bring a lot of different decision criteria that folks use when there are debates to keep or remove or modify dams in some way or another.
To go back to which university do my kids go to, which you'll have to decide when they stop yelling. If you keep saying, yeah, but tuition's about $7,000 a year and food's about, $600 a month, it's going to cost something for tuition and something for food wherever you go. So that really should be off the table. There's no such thing as an option with no impact. Doing nothing has an impact. The structure is going to deteriorate and so on. So I am amazed that you came up with 88% of biomass can be restored on some rivers with only a loss of 15% of hydropower. Now, I'm not sure, and I don't want to get into the controversy of quantifying with a dollar amount biomass, but man, that is a huge restoration of living things for a very minimal diminution in the hydroelectric generation cost.
Yeah, so it sort of reflects the way in which these dams are organized within a river basin. So it turns out that for the case in New England anyway, the largest hydropower producing dams are located further up into the headwaters of these rivers. And so there's less overlap between where hydropower is produced and where the majority of sea-run fish species want to migrate and where their natal habitat is located. That's of course not the case for every single species. For example, brook trout, they prefer habitat further up in the headwaters. American eel is another species where that's important. Atlantic salmon as well. But it was sort of it's a result that encouraged us in this work to see that there is indeed some positive overlap between our ability to produce hydropower and the ability to restore fisheries through dam removal as a tool for river restoration.
Well, and I wonder if I'm oversimplifying when I say you almost have a kind of live and let live conclusion that the strong hydro generating dams upstream should be allowed to live, and then tourism and whitewater rafting and fish and such downstream should be allowed to live as well. Is that kind of it?
That's sort of where we lead the paper. Yeah. So we, but again, the final decision is a bit in the eye of the beholder. We're just here to provide the information in a way that's organized that could help people explore different what if scenarios for dam decision making. So that could be maybe there is a greater interest in restoring sea run fish, and maybe there's an interest in maintaining or improving the recreational value or the tourism value of freshwater rivers in the area. That would lead to decisions that would you'd want to focus on dam removal or modification further down in the in the river basins that would allow for that to happen, but still maintain those resources from dams that are important for recreation and for sea run fish.
Now, I must confess that I must be about 75 years behind the times in my thinking because I've read Robert Caro's books about your president, Lyndon Johnson. I've read about the Tennessee Valley Authority and things like rural electrification, dams, flood control, etc., were just a godsend to people in rural America, including women who didn't have to do the backbreaking and sometimes fatal work on farms. Yet, uh, I feel like smacking my forehead. We now have solar and wind and conservation and other methods of generating power. So I guess some of these dams, to return to one of your points, have just outlived their usefulness.
Yes, so that is correct. A lot of these dams have, they've come one after the other. Essentially, like a lot of the dams in New England, they have roots back to the 1700s, 1800s. They've been rebuilt, of course, since then. But when were they rebuilt? It was probably during the 30s or the 40s, and so they're starting to age again. They've outlived their purpose. Some of them still definitely have value. That's not to write off all dams, of course. There's many sort of more modern hydropower projects that are managed to higher standard. But these tend to be those larger projects that I mentioned before that are located further up in the headwaters of these locations. So it's true that the trick is to try to offset any potential losses as well. So that's another important element of the work that we've done, is to try to track what hydropower production we lose and to see or look for opportunities that could lead to offsetting those losses. So that could be improving turbine capacity in dams that remain within the watershed. It could be investing in other renewable renewable energy sources such as wind or solar. So there are many. We're hoping to sort of make this or connect this work to other studies that could sort of lead to more decisions that could or connect to other decisions outside of just dam management, thinking about the energy grid as a whole, for example, and other opportunities to produce energy.
I think I'm using your methodology as I think about what to do about my very old car. And about every year, I think, well, should I sell it? There isn't much of a market for it. My goodness, the cost of a new car is outrageous. But the cost of repairing my car is about the cost of another clunker car. So that's kind of the calculus for these dams. And I was interested to find that your paper indicated that the cost of refurbishing a dam or even building fish ladders and other accommodations for fish was actually more expensive than removing the dam. That's kind of a surprising. Were you surprised when you found that?
I was surprised, and it's like many things, it's sort of a case by case basis. But the the vast majority of case studies that we looked at, dam removal tends to be the cheapest option. And when you think about it, it does begin to make sense. For example, if you're think about building a new home versus trying to restore and repair an old home. It can be much more expensive to do that. And that's the same for dams. If the dam was built in 1930, for example, it will need substantial structural repairs on top of addition of a new fish ladder, for example, or the addition of a new turbine to ensure that you're securing your investment in that dam to ensure that it will continue to be a safe dam to operate.
Now, Sam Roy, I did the best I could reading this academic article, and I frankly skipped over the equations. They're a little beyond my capability. It's fixing up old cars that's my specialty. But as well as I hope I did, is there something I missed out on that we should have talked about? I want to give you the last word.
No, I think you did a stand-up job in reading my work. It's not always easy to follow my thoughts, but I would say also that going back to the idea that it's not just keeping or removing a dam. There's many other alternative decisions that could be used in dam decision making. And also, I just wanted to emphasize the significance of trying to coordinate many dam decisions within a basin. So that's sort of going back to the point that you made about how you could have some substantial restoration of sea-run fish within a basin, but keep the majority of hydropower production within it. That's focusing decisions to remove dams within a component of the basin, but keeping them in another location. You could add other decisions to that as well. For example, improving hydropower capacity at one of those dams that you keep further up in the watershed, or it could be adding fish passage facilities, fish ladders, things like that, to dams that maybe they have other values attached to them. Maybe they're historically significant, or maybe they're valuable for recreational purposes. Maybe they have a large reservoir behind them that's used that has a large recreational value attached to it. So it's important to think of this as sort of a series of decisions that could be combined to lead to better overall benefits for many different services or utilities of the dam, but also for restoration purposes.
Well, very informative, the article and listening to you speak about it. I know there's one question that I'm sure everyone viewing really wants to know the answer to. How old is that child or children that we hear in the background?
So I have one who is turning 6 years old next week, and I have another who is turning 2 in another couple months.
Well, again, I think I speak for everyone watching. Please either feed them, give them a toy, or whatever it is they want, because we may be in this lockdown for a while longer.
Yes, sir. Will do. Thank you, Alan.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Yep. Bye.